last session for the day, the valedictory session, is by Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe. Is a member of Parliament, President of ICCR, Indian Council for Cultural Relations, and also is the chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education. We're very honored to have Dr. Sahasrabuddhe with us to deliver the valedictory remarks. More importantly, he will speak about how we're talking a lot about how the Indian higher education system should strive towards making India a hub for international education, quality education that will attract people from across the world to come study in India. The national education policy makes a reference to it in the form of calling it, how can India become a Vishwaguru? Dr. Sahasrabuddhe will talk about it. Due to his commitments, he unfortunately cannot be joining us in person, but he has a message for us, and I'm going to now request our AV team to start the session. Thank you very much.
Namaskar and greetings to all who have joined this higher education dialogue organized by the Indian School of Business and the Niti Aayog. And the subject is also very exciting because it is about revisiting higher education in India, global, local and digital imperatives. And I'm happy that a very prestigious business school like ISB decided to discuss this particular issue and all its dimensions. I'm happy that the National Education Policy, which was unveiled last year, had several important characteristics that tell us as to how the very agenda of educational change, or rather transforming the nation via the education, was kind of waiting for some brilliant initiatives in tune with the times, and also that would take us from the glorious past of this country through the present exciting times to a very enriching kind of future that awaits all of us. And therefore, any discussion on this subject is very, very relevant. But before I deal with the entire gamut of issues that this particular dialogue has been discussing today, let me point out what are the key features of the national education policy and when we talk about global, local and digital imperatives. There are at least 5 important features of the national education policy that was unveiled last year. Firstly, it very clearly states that rootedness in Indian culture is something very, very critical, which perhaps previously no such document had stated in that kind of unequivocal terms. The second important feature is that the national education policy is absolutely student-centric. At the same time, it is teacher-oriented. Fourthly, as compared to the past, this national education policy is more flexible and it provides a huge scope for experimentation and innovation. And fifthly, it is technology-driven in the sense technology plays a key role in the implementation of the letter and spirit of the national education policy. Now, when it comes to rootedness, let me take you a little back. Many of you must have heard the name of Anand K. Kumar Swamy, a art critic and historian of the previous century. Anand Kumar Swamy was very critical about the British initiated education, and all of us are aware that there were attempts earlier by Mahatma Phule, later on by Lokmanya Tilak, Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar to introduce a new element in education. Tilak named it as Rashtriya Shiksha or national education. Mahatma Gandhi, in a more matter-of-factly approach, decided to call it as Mulodyogi Shiksha or basic education. And therefore, many such stalwarts were not happy with the way Britishers were implementing their plan of education in our country, which had a dark shadow of colonial thinking, and how it had impacted the very psyche and the very thinking of the Indian youths of those times. Anand Kumar Swami, in a very graphical description, tells us. And I am quoting Kumar Swami, and this is from Modern Review of Kolkata, and it was published in 1908, more than 100 years before. Kumar Swami says, and I quote, "Speak to the ordinary graduate of an Indian university or a student from Ceylon of the details of the Mahabharata, he will hasten to display his knowledge of Shakespeare. Talk to him of religious philosophy. You find him that he is unaware of it, and not only he has no religion, but is lacking in philosophy of the average Englishman. Talk to him of Indian music. He will produce a gramophone or a harmonium and inflict upon you one or both. Talk to him of Indian dress or jewelry. He will tell you that they are uncivilized and barbaric. Talk to him of Indian art. It is news to him that such a thing exists. Ask him to translate for you a letter in his own mother tongue. He does not know it. He is indeed a stranger in his own land." I am really afraid that the description that Anand K. Kumar Swami presents us through this very thought-provoking article in Modern Review in 1908, unfortunately, is relevant even today. And therefore, the need for rootedness in Indian culture and taking pride in the idea of India, through which we have grown not only post-independence, but even before that, it's something very, very important. I have the document of National Education Policy, and on page 6, it tells us very importantly a rootedness and pride in India and its rich, diverse, ancient and modern culture and knowledge system and traditions. It also tells us, again very importantly, respect for diversity and respect for the local context in all curriculum, pedagogy and policy, always keeping in mind that education is a concurrent subject. And therefore, this is the important feature. I would describe this that the National Education Policy presents us an opportunity to de-Macaulayize the Indian education, to do away with the dark and ominous shadow of Macaulay, which we have unfortunately continued even after the independence. Important feature of this education policy, and we are talking about global, local and digital imperatives, is the localization. Never before in the past, mother tongue was put at the center of our thinking about education. Because taking education, and not just primary education and secondary education, but also higher education, learning, let's say, subjects like medicine or engineering, technology, in your mother tongue, it's something very, very important which was not there earlier in the past. A Frenchman can definitely learn medicine in French language. A German can do so in German language. A Spanish can do so in Spanish language. Then why a Telugu cannot learn medicine or technology in Telugu language is the critical question, and this particular education policy answers this question very critically. Now, coming to the other features of the new education policy, as I said, it is extremely student-centric. If you look into the very document for education, the new education policy, it tells us that how early childhood education has been given due importance. That was not the case earlier. Today, for example, when we talk about the national education policy, the pattern also has been changed from 5 plus 3. It has been changed to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, which means that the child will come into the formalized structure of education right at the age of 4. So age 5 and 6, for example, will also be covered through the national education policy, which was not there earlier. And today, when there are several issues about early childhood care, I think considering early childhood education not as a part of informal but as a part of formal educational structure is something very, very critical. The student-centric features, I believe, start from there. There are many other aspects also. In fact, while we were discussing the reforms that are required in textbooks, their content and their design, many students tried to approach us. And the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education, in fact, allowed a student of class 9 to depose before it and share his ideas about how the textbooks should be restructured. Because the coming of age of children today, it has got advanced. At a very early age, students are exposed to several new things, and therefore the process of their coming of age starts early. Naturally, thanks to the exposure, I believe that students also require to be taken into confidence, and this national education policy tells us about the importance of seeking students' participation in every other way, in every other aspect of the management of education. It's something very, very important. Another feature on page 12, it tells us about how art education requires to be integrated through a holistic development of for a holistic development of the learner. It also talks about experiential learning. Never before in the past so much importance was given to experiential learning. Today, for example, there is a needless compartmentalization. If you want to learn music, you cannot learn technology, or vice versa. Now it is possible. Even the IITs in our country have started humanities as a department, which is, I believe, a kind of important step in the right direction. The third important feature is teacher orientation. Because the entire education policy document discusses teachers and their role in as many as 10 pages out of 68. So that much importance has been given. It also deals with teaching as a profession in a very holistic manner. Simply to quote a particular and a very fundamental approach which comes through this particular paragraph on page 23 of the document, it tells us to prevent the large amounts of time spent currently by teachers on non-teaching activities. Teachers will not be engaged any longer in work that is not directly related to teaching. In particular, teachers will not be involved in strenuous administrative tasks and more than a rationalized minimum time for midday meal related work, something very, very important. While the government continues to emphasize midday meal, it has clearly realized that engaging students in the administration of these kinds of projects is something which is not desirable. I believe the teachers will now heave a sigh of relief as they are likely to be free from duties like they have to conduct during the census or during the so many elections that we manage in our country. The fourth important feature is it is more flexible and pro-experimentation. I mean, there are examples after examples which I can tell you as to how this has become a more flexible, a more resilient kind of a document. Simply to quote certain things, let me tell you that on this particular count, not only it integrates humanity and technology, but in several ways it also tells us about how do we mainstream the children with special needs, CWSN as what they are called, and the present policy of the government, I mean the national education policy which came last year, tells us the importance of mainstreaming of children that are suffering from, say, slow learning or dyslexia or intellectual disability or autism and so on and so forth, because these are the new age challenges and the national education policy has rightly addressed them. Lastly, the importance of technology. I believe the pandemic, if there is one particular important message that we have gathered out of our experience through the pandemic times, it is the criticality of employing new technologies, whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it is augmented reality, whether it is virtual reality. All these things require now to be integrated in education, and I am sure this new education policy will take us towards that, as it provides a huge amount of scope for incorporating all new technologies in the instructional design under the national education policy, which we are now going to implement in the years to come. All in all, what I wanted to suggest is, before I close, that while it certainly has taken care of the global dimension of new education approaches, I mean globally, which have become very relevant, it is also very rooted in the Indian ethos, because it tells us about taking pride in our culture, taking pride in our traditions, and emphasizes on the local importance of local languages as well. And the technology aspect, it also deals with the digital imperatives that we are now going to see in the days to come. I congratulate the framers of the national education policy and also compliment the Indian School of Business and the Niti Aayog for organizing this kind of a dialogue and allowing me to share my analysis of the national education policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe ji, for your valedictory remarks and sort of for taking us through the salient features of the national education policy, the implementation of which all of us are looking forward to, and something that is already in progress. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we come to the end of the current edition of the Higher Education Dialogue. We're very thank you all for sort of staying through. I want to thank the Niti Aayog for its partnership and for the support that has been extended in organizing this conclave. Special mention to Dr. Rajiv Kumar, the Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog, for his constant support, and also for some of the important messages that he gave to us at ISB, and also I would say higher education institutions in the country, on what we need to do as we try to build a new India and to sort of put the emphasis back on research and some of those other key important aspects. I also want to thank all the speakers who shared their insights over the past 2 days, on the 20th of January and today, and for sort of joining us enthusiastically, being very, very open with their ideas, not just, and also giving some roadmap for execution of some of those ideas. I also want to thank my colleagues at ISB, who moderated these sessions, Professor Madan Pillutla, the Dean of the school, for his moderating the first session, and for the inaugural session as well, Professor Krishnamurthy Subramanian, Professor Deepamani, Professor Bhagwan Chaudhary, and to all the other colleagues at ISB who sort of helped manage this session very wonderfully over the last 2 days. To all of you who've joined us, please do stay connected with us through our social media channels, and also do keep us informed in terms of what are some of the ideas that you've taken forward from here, or you will take forward from this session and implementation. If you want to connect with our speakers, I see some of you have asked questions saying, will we get the access to the videos? We will surely be hosting all these videos on our school's YouTube channels in a few days' time. Look forward, you can sort of, get those videos there. And to everyone else who's supported us in organizing this session, thank you very much, and we look forward to staying connected. Thank you.